Hello, SepGo here, and welcome to a new Lines of Battle video. Yes, this is totally true. Today, in this video, we are going to talk about Militia. This rectangle with rounded edges is the main character of this video. In this game, it's pretty common to see army compositions with a lot of line infantry units. I've used these types of formations for a while in my games. Since the ancient times of the game, I haven't played with Militia in any of my compositions ever again. Well, I never played with them. Back then, Militia didn't exist. The line infantry had the same design of the Militia as we know now, the difference being that these units didn't have rounded edges. So, with no reason at all, I started to think in the possibility to make an army composition with Militia as its main infantry force, a composition that can fight and, obviously, win the battles. With this in mind, I started my crusade in order to find a Militia army composition that works. In order to define a game style, we first need to look at the strengths of the Militia unit. We can see that it has two very good characteristics. The first one being the cost. The Militia is the cheapest unit of all the infantry units. Its price is the half of the price of a grenadier unit. This means that using Militia we can have a lot of infantry units in battle. The second characteristic is the value of the ranged attack. 17. The same ranged attack of a line of infantry, and just 1 point behind of the grenadiers. I must also say that even if these units have low organization, when it's stable, its charge resistance is not that bad. Obviously it is not good, but it's not horrible. It allows to hold some cavalry charges. With all this, I can now develop a style, in which the objective is to use the Militia units, allowing them to shoot almost all the time, maximizing the damage the opponent receives in range. And also, if one Militia unit is lost, at least one regular infantry unit of the opponent goes down too. Now let's look at its weaknesses. The organization or morale of this unit is really low. In hand-to-hand combat against regular infantry units, Militia loses. Its melee is low compared to the others, and against a cavalry charge, depending on the numbers and type of cavalry, they can also lose. Now, at this moment, Militia can only form in mass or in line, which exposes its rear and its flank. With this, we can say now that in this game style we must avoid hand-to-hand combat and also avoid charges in the rear and in the flank. Before I continue, I wanted to mention that I had already been working on this video for a while. However, for personal reasons, I had to stop the development of the video. That's why I haven't uploaded videos to the channel. And although I also stopped playing Lines of Battle for a bit, you could say I've been adapting this army composition for several months now. So here I present you the first developed Militia army composition, with an impressive total amount of 60 Militia units. There is absolutely no doubt that this is the main infantry unit of this formation. 24 skirmisher units, 15 howitzer units, and 1 lonely grenadier. At the time I developed this formation, the game had not yet been updated, so Militia could still use other formations like the square and the column. Also, at this moment, the ratio of skirmishers given per Militia was more. Okay, so now in more detail, let's check the formation and the idea behind of it. If we check the formation, we can see that I have a full width deployment. Practically all the Militia goes from side to side. I've also formed the Militia into lines, this because of the overwhelming amount of these units. The Grenadier unit is just here to fill in the numbers and also give support in the middle. It can also be replaced by 2 Militia units. From the start, the army is in its battle formation, and the idea is to move it forwards. The reason I chose the howitzer as the main artillery of this composition was because of some of its abilities. Its canister fire had and still has a really good damage modifier. With this, I can dissuade my opponent from engaging in hand-to-hand combat. The other thing is the explosive shell. While not that lethal, the important asset here is the arc height. This allows the howitzer to shoot into the white zone even with friendly units in front of the gun. They don't block the path of the shells. The idea with this is that I can wear down the superior infantry units of my opponent, directly helping my militia units in the fight against them. The skirmishers have the role to occupy special terrain like houses and forests in all the width of the battle. So, with this composition for battle mode, I decided to test it against the computer and the standard formation before going out into the world and play it against real people. This ended in a victory. But let's rewind and look at a specific moment of the battle. In general, we can see that the composition did the work as intended. However, because I was playing against the computer, we could see a big concentration of enemy units in the middle, with the objective to just charge into it. Even though the militia manages to fire a lot, this pressure managed to break the middle, and also divide my army in two. We have to consider that the computer does not play well. A human player could take advantage of the charge in order to wipe my units and keep the pressure, because the computer here stops the attack and just stays in the middle without doing anything else. So this presented one weakness of the composition. And it has to be with massive charges going for a specific point in the formation. In this case it was the middle. Few days after I tested this formation, the game was updated. I received less skirmishers per militia, but the increased composition budget allowed me to put more units. I decided to leave out the grenadier and use a composition of militia and hussars. With this, I could help in the close combat, eliminating weak enemy units. Based on the previous composition, I kept the 60 militias, the 15 howitzers, and selected 14 hussars with 12 skirmishers. To make easier the control and maneuver of my units, I decided to form them in 15 columns, each with 1 howitzer in front and 4 militia following. Against the computer, I could see a more solid composition than the previous one. The column of 4 militia units allows easy unit rotation and helps in preparing better reserve lines in the case that the front line falters. Here I used the fallback order to avoid collapse in the middle and to keep my militia shooting. So with this I have a rather elegant system and ready for the battle. I prepared similar compositions for Clash and Combat mode, and it was time to test it against real people. My army is now facing another. Loti's army is now facing mine. Conscripts, fresh from the fields, are instructed to form up and follow the cannons. It is the time. This is the real trial by fire. Let's stop the battle for a moment and let's analyze the situation. The idea is to keep the width of the formation and start pressing up. With this composition and formation, the terrain is usually not that important to consider. For example, if my opponent decides to use these units to attack here, some of my columns could go and hold the attack, avoiding close combat, while other columns go for the flank, in order to deliver more fire on those positions. For the moment, everything is okay. Let's continue. Remember what happened against the Computer in the first battle? The opponent has done a massive push into the middle, using the combat advantage of the grenadier units and the cursors. Something to highlight here is the proximity of my opponent's cannons. The canister fire here rapidly lowers the morale of my frontal units. With this, when the massive charge is done, wiping the front units is easier. Under the already established, I will keep retreating my units in order to maximize the fire I can deliver into the enemy units. However, something that worries me here is my proximity to my HQ star. Because of the aggressive pressure, my opponent managed to capture all the other stars and my units couldn't advance. Getting in close combat with my army is not good. When my opponent captured the middle stars, trying to advance into them is just too difficult. And I lost. But that's okay. I've learned from this lost battle, and I just need to make my composition better. Sadly, I understood that surviving using only militia is not possible. Even with this wide formation, the fire is not maximized, leaving clumsy units in the reserve lines. Unorganized and constant pressure, like the one Lottie does here, breaks the militia lines. But not everything went wrong. In the left flank, we could see how my militia units, with the help of some cavalry units, managed to repel the attack and practically win the flank. So I had to do something in order to hold the middle, the place where the attack is more common, so then I could use the advantage I've seen on the flanks. The solution? Use 18 grenadiers that now will go to the middle. This resulted in now having 24 militia units, less than half of the first composition. However, they still are the majority of the infantry units in the formation, so we could still say that the militia is the main infantry unit of the formation. The next battle was against Tercio y Medio, another ranked battle, and this time with the experience gained in the battle against Lottie, I wanted to show the ability of my new formation. Immediately, the army deploys in columns, with the grenadiers in the middle and 3 militia columns in both sides. In this battle, using my grenadiers, I advance a lot in the middle. However, we can see how my opponent concentrated the attack on the right flank, and that my militias are just about to collapse. This battle was a long battle. It ended on the last turn, and it was decided by victory points. But for this moment, the ammunition of my cannons was already running low, and even there were some howitzers no longer firing. So that's why here I started to question the capability of the howitzer in the composition. Also, because the howitzer has such a short range, the best way to use it is by putting it close to the combat units. This is expensive and can result in the loss of the piece. So this battle was very revealing in the use of the artillery and also the deployment and distribution of my army. Even here, my opponent could charge into my weak militia flanks. More changes were needed. Now, the battle composition consisted in 30 militias, 15 grenadiers, 14 hussars, 12 skirmishers, and 15 licornes. For the artillery, the best option here was definitely the licorne. I still needed a cannon with arc height, so I could still shoot from behind my units. This is achieved with the explosive shell in the green zone. However, the main reason for the selection of this piece was the ammo consumption the cannon had at that time. Compared to a howitzer, the licorne had less ammo consumption, and it also has more range. This meant that I could shoot farther and for more turns. Even if I couldn't use the impressive canister damage modifier of the howitzer, the Licorne has more canister range. Honestly, at that time, the Licorne was simply too broken. At this moment, the Licorne consumes more ammo for long fire. In the case of the howitzer, we see a reduction in the ammo consumption and a little increase in the range attack. But anyway, I had to use this advantage. Now that I had 15 cannons, 15 grenadiers and 30 militias, I could deploy my army in 15 columns. With this deployment, I aim to make independent columns, giving each of them an individual maneuver and combat strength. This also allows them to link with each other when needed in order to respond to different situations of the battlefield. Here we can see concentrated Licorne fire on a blob of enemy artillery units. Now I could fire artillery for a lot of turns, concentrating fire on specific points, inflicting catastrophic casualties. Here we can see a failed infantry charge. The 2 grenadiers and the militia are not enough to hold all the counter-charge of my opponent. However, with the help of the artillery, the attack is stopped. In the other side, we can see how my grenadier attack also doesn't work. However, because my opponent concentrated units here, I could also concentrate artillery fire here now, and prepare a militia counter-charge. Because my opponent is weakened, he cannot charge. This allowed me to maximize the fire of the militia. And with this, the militia composition wins its first battle. The battle stats of some of the battles played in May of this year are not shown. As we can see in this battle, and in the ones I showed you before, the game had some type of error at that time. However, in this battle, my opponent suffered a lot of casualties. After this battle, I went on a winning streak, mainly in clash and combat mode. Curiously, on this clash battle, I once again used the composition of howitzers and militia, and it turned out that my opponent had practically the opposite formation, using guards and cuirassiers. This meant that I almost had double the size of my opponent's army. Once I unlocked the horse archers, I started replacing my hussars with these units, because the composition tries to avoid close combat and is always trying to fight in the distance. This is an appropriate unit for the formation. And also, the horse archers are not that bad in close combat, getting close to a hussar. The casualties of my opponents can be enormous, being the double of my own, like in this battle. Even with the Licorne ammo consumption increase, the composition still has its punch. Sometimes it's good to change the deployment structure in order to prepare surprise attacks with units hidden behind a mountain. Obviously, this army is not invincible. There were some lost battles. And not every ambush prepared behind a mountain works. With this, we've arrived at the end of the video. Honestly, creating, testing and putting into practice this militia composition was really entertaining for me. It's one of the compositions I've had the most fun playing with. I consider that this composition is really difficult to use. It has little margin for error, which means that even small mistakes could end with a lost battle. However, this thing is stupidly fun for me. Do I recommend this composition for you to play? I don't think so. Using it will depend solely on you. So thanks for watching the video and see you next time.